I like to explain this as what if Pokemon went to medical school? So Pokemon is a creature collector game where you travel around, you catch these cute little creatures, you raise them up, you build a team, and so forth. What we are trying to do is build something very similar, except for all of our monsters, instead of being Pikachu or Bulbasaur or Charmander, all of our creatures represent something in the body. So we have the heart, the lungs, the kidneys, skeletal muscle, we have all of them.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Vandal Theory, a podcast about science and research at University of Idaho. Every episode brings you the stories behind the science, the breakthroughs, the bold ideas, and the brilliant minds driving discovery across the state. U of I has even joined the elite list of universities sporting a Carnegie R1 classification for very high research activity. This puts us in the top 4% of research universities nationwide and makes us the only one in Idaho with that distinction. My name is Lee Cooper, and I'm the editor and science writer here at University of Idaho, and I am joined by Danae. Hi, Danae.
Hi, Lee. I'm Danae Lenz. I'm the external communications coordinator at U of I.
So today, we're going to talk about combining medical education and Pokemon, which I promise will make sense in just a minute. Question to get our minds turning. Danae, in school, did you ever use any learning tricks to memorize information?
I didn't do much, and that probably was to my detriment in school. I remember I used flashcards. If I was to do anything, I did flashcards quite a lot and then just quizzed myself. But beyond that, no, I didn't do a whole lot.
I would definitely, despite my being a terrible artist, I would draw little pictures of things, and it would help me, recall them during a test or something like that. But today, we're going to really dive into what it takes to learn a lot of information quickly. We're going to meet Tyler Bland, a clinical assistant professor in the School of Health and Medical Professions. Medical students struggle to learn and retain the fire hose of information they need to become doctors, and Bland is going to explain how he is using ingenuity, imagination, and AI to create Pokemon-esque monsters and medical-themed movies to help his students learn. Ready to go?
Let's do it.
Tyler, welcome to the Vandal Theory. We are so happy to have you. Can you introduce yourself to everyone?
Yes, of course. So I am Dr. Tyler Bland. I work in the WHAMI program here on campus. For those who aren't familiar, that is our medical school here. So we partner with the University of Washington School of Medicine. Students that get in there, so medical students, they can do their first 2 years in one of the WHAMI states. And so we are the I in WHAMI. And so I teach first and second year medical students.
Do you have any specialty areas, or do you teach all medicine, everything?
Yes. So my main specialty that I do here or that I teach is pharmacology, and that is how do drugs work. And since I teach all of the pharmacology in the curriculum, from antibiotics to cardiovascular drugs to gut drugs, all of it, I kind of have to dabble in all the other topics as well. And so they pull me in to do some of the other topics such as physiology, biochemistry, some cell-phys stuff. I just mentioned that because it lends itself to some of my projects a little later.
Obviously, you teach medical students. And I know one of your big things is you want to improve medical education. So what about medical education do you think needs improvement? What are the problems that you're trying to solve?
Oh, where do we start? Well, the first one, and I wouldn't call this a problem, I would call this more of a challenge, is that the body of information that our students are required to know is astronomical. We use the analogy of trying to drink from a fire hose, that we just put a fire hose in our students' mouth and just pump them full of education on all these topics. It's a lot, and it's a lot for the students to handle.
That makes sense to me just because, even within my lifespan, and I don't learn medical things, but science has just exploded. The amount of things you have to learn and the depth at which we now understand them is so much more than when even I started doing this.
Exactly. And so we say we're teaching our students a lot now. The thing is that it's only going to get even more. I would say worse, but it's a good thing that we're understanding more information. And so, yeah, I think this is just going to get compounded throughout the years where our medical students are required to learn more and more knowledge.
Okay, so an expanding fire hose.
Yes.
So, how do the students react to that? I mean, what happens?
Yes, so there are a couple different ways that they react to this and they try to digest some of this material. And one way is what leads to our second problem that we're trying to fix. And that is many students are not showing up to class. Is that they are finding ways to learn this material elsewhere. Whether for good or for ill, they're finding that third party resources, so resources outside of the university, outside of the classroom, these resources are able to teach them this information either better or help them to retain that information longer.
What's like an example of what they're turning to?
Yeah, one great example is Sketchy Medical.
Okay.
And so, what Sketchy is Sketchy uses mnemonics. And so, what mnemonics are, it's kind of a mind hook. It's a way that helps you remember important information in the long term. And what they do is they put together these cartoon images where every single aspect inside that image represents something in whatever topic they're trying to cover. And so what students can do is they can remember this easily memorable high yield image that they can remember what the picture looks like and pull out the important characteristics of whatever it's representing. And so it really helps them retain this information long term. Just as one example. And so what we are trying to do is how can we fix this? I'm in the classroom. That's what my platform is. How can I try to help them learn this information better? But they have to be in the classroom in order for me to do that.
So, what are some of the ideas you're testing, just generally before we get into your specifics?
The main thing that I'm trying to do is help my students learn this information. My second one is to do it on my platform, being in the classroom. And so there's a couple ways that you can do that. You can either mandate students be in the classroom, or you can make classroom worth their while. Now, regardless of your views on point one, mandating them to be in class or not, it doesn't really matter for me because I have no say over that. What I do have say over is number two, can I make class worth their while? And so that's what most of my projects are targeting is can I present something in the classroom that helps them learn it, that helps them understand it, that can sometimes be hopefully fun, both on the student side, but then also on my side that I enjoy teaching it as well.
An extra perk.
Of course.
All right, so let's talk about one of your big projects. You call these little critters you've made Medimon. What is a Medimon?
Yes, great question. So, for all of the listeners who are familiar with Pokemon, I like to explain this as what if Pokemon went to medical school? So Pokemon is a creature collector game where you travel around, you catch these cute little creatures, you raise them up, you build a team, and so forth. What we are trying to do is build something very similar, except for all of our monsters, instead of being Pikachu or Bulbasaur or Charmander, all of our creatures represent something in the body. So we have the heart, the lungs, the kidneys, skeletal muscle, we have all of them. And we take a note from Sketchy's book, which I just explained earlier, in that we use visual mnemonics to help students understand either important characteristics or functions or even diagnostic criteria, because some of them represent diseases, and we bake that into the visual design of each of these characters. So similar to Sketchy, where students they can close their eyes and they can remember what these images look like and pull that important characteristics out. What I hope that they can do with Medimon is just remember what these cute characters look like, these cute creatures, these cute monsters, and pull those important characteristics out as well. But we want to take it a step further from Sketchy, in that Sketchy are just videos of these images that students can look at where they kind of draw it in real time and they walk them through that. We also want to add an active layer component on top of it. So not only do they have these characters that they can learn from, but they can actually play a game and walk through the game in, as I said, more of an active learning style.
So I'll come back to the game in a second, but can you give an example of what one of these creatures is and maybe kind of looks like, and then some of the variations on that?
So just like Pokemon, how they have kind of a baby, an adolescent, and an adult version where they kind of evolve into each other as they grow, we have a very similar format where we have a baby Medimon, which evolves into an adolescent Medimon, into an adult, and they're grouped into families. And so each Medimon family represents either an organ or a body system. We also have healthy versions, and so there's healthy Medimon, and then each of those, so the baby, adolescent, adult, also has a diseased version, kind of a darker version, which are diseases related to whatever they represent. Now, as an example, it's best if I explain how this even came about. And so, how this started was because I have to teach a lot of the material throughout the curriculum, I, of course, have to remember this. And it started out with bone physiology. There are multiple cells in bone, but two of the main ones are osteoclasts and osteoblasts. So clasts with a C, blasts with a B, and one builds up bone and one breaks down bone. And I can never remember, do clasts cleave bone or do blasts blow up bone? Like I didn't have a very good mnemonic for that. And so I thought, what if I had a picture of the cell for osteoclasts? It has a little C on it and it's breaking a bone. So that I remember that osteoclasts break down bone. And then on the flip side, I have an osteoblast, so a cell with a B, and he has a full bone with a hammer. And then I thought, oh, these kind of look like little creatures. What if they grew into each other? This looks kind of like Pokemon. And so that's how this spun out. Most of them either resemble the item that they look like in real life. And so for osteoclasts, he has a little bone that he's breaking to represent that they break down bone. He's wearing kind of a hood that has a ruffled border on it. This is because those cells actually have ruffled borders.
Oh,
So
okay.
so the visual aspect of the character actually looks like what the real thing is. And then some of them, we just use some of the visuals for fun. So, for instance, some of the immune cells for the granulocytes, these are cells that secrete nasty things to kill invaders when you get sick. We made them look like kitties. And it isn't because they look like kitties in real life, it's just because I thought, hey, kitties are cool. Let's have kitties in the game.
But a lot of them make sense intuitively, even for somebody who's doesn't have a medical background. You had, I believe, inflammation was things on fire, right?
Correct.
Which that's what it feels like.
Correct. Yeah, so we tried to tie in as much as we could the visuals to what happens in real life. We also tried to make them as easily understandable as well. So, for instance, on the inflammation side, when you think inflammation, you kind of think something's on fire, something's hot. So, we represented inflammation as fire.
How many of these little critters have you made at this point?
We have a lot. So, our current count, we have 188 characters. So, that's baby, adolescent, adult, healthy, disease, all of them. And then when we chunk them into families, we have 31 families, typically representing various systems throughout the body. We don't have all of the systems, we don't have all of the cells. That would require even more. But at least for the first game, we have 188 and 31 families.
So tell me about that. You said first game. How many games are there going to be, and what's the difference?
Yeah, so our first game is just introducing the concept, and that is going to include healthy and diseased characters. So for all of our families, we split them half healthy, half diseased. In our second game, what we want to do is we want to expand into other categories and expand our monster count. And so for game two, we are calling that Medimon neoplasms, and that is going to cover cancer. And so we're going to have all of the same healthy characters, but instead of diseased versions, we'll have cancers related to those healthy medis. In game three, we plan on going inside of the brain, so digging into that further, just because there's so many cells, there's so many nuclei, there's so many areas and diseases inside of the brain. We wanted to devote a whole game to it. And so that'll include neurodegenerative diseases, it'll include other different types of cells inside the brain. And then in our last game, we want to kind of wrap it up and we want to look at a more holistic view of medicine to include other medis, which will be determined later.
Obviously, your game is just coming out, but are you using these in your classes already as part of, demonstrations and things like that?
We first started with all of the Medimon artwork. And so we wanted to get our base characters done, make sure we get all the mnemonics baked into them, make sure all of the characters made sense. And since then, we have been in the process of developing the actual game. As of right now, we have one level done of the first game, of which the first game will have eventually 8 levels that students can walk through. But because we only recently got that one level done, students can play it now, but we haven't been using it as much in the classroom. Because we had that artwork done, we've been using the artwork for actually many years now. As we get to lectures on the bone, so for instance,
Okay.
when I teach drugs that affect bone or calcium metabolism, I insert the Medimon pictures with all of the mnemonics, and we walk through how the medis work. We walk through how it teaches the students about important characteristics of osteoclast, about the important diagnostic criteria of osteoporosis, and then we walk into the actual drugs used to treat those. Response has been pretty positive.
Good.
Students enjoy it, whether they use it or not in their studies. Some students have said they do, some say that they haven't. What really matters to me is that I really enjoy teaching from them up in front of the classroom, and I'm really going to enjoy having them, hopefully, enjoy the game here in the future.
So let's move to one of your other projects. A lot of times, medical students, one of the big ways to learn is using case studies. So, walking through a random person who has a disease or an injury or whatever the case may be, and then trying to figure out how you'd help that person. Would it basically sum up what a case study is?
Yes, no, that's very good. So for most of my lectures, what we do on the pharmacology side is going back to the bone example. We learn how healthy bone works, and then we learn about the diseases, say osteoporosis. We go into the drugs to treat osteoporosis, and then we always end with a clinical case.
Okay.
So 84-year-old patient comes to the clinic, they have a bone fracture, they get tests, and then students are tasked with what's the diagnosis, how do you treat, what are the typical side effects, and so forth. So what we try to do is teach them the material and have them practice it in a way
Sure.
that they would see in their future practice.
And you've decided you wanted to upgrade these.
Yes.
So, how are you trying to upgrade these?
Yes. So we're trying to take a note, kind of what we're already doing with mnemonics, and build those also into the clinical cases as well. I'm also a big movie buff, and so I wanted to tie that in as well. And so what I do is I take the clinical case that we have, I try to find a celebrity or movie star who has suffered from that disease. I find a movie that they have been in, and I combine those all together and I make a fictional movie, typically either a sequel or a prequel to whatever the real movie is, starring said celebrity that has the disease, and then we walk through diagnosing and treating that celebrity in the movie. And then we also try to convert some of the drugs, some of the, let's say, diagnostic criteria also into mnemonics, either visual or auditory. And then I also try to slide Medimon in there as well because synergy is best.
So, give me an example.
Yeah, so one of the well-known ones that my students know is the Selena Gomez case.
Okay.
So in our infections and immunity course, we learn about autoimmune diseases, we learn about transplants, and so in the traditional case, we walk through a patient who has lupus and who has had a kidney transplant. And this can typically look like 23-year-old female comes to the clinic, complaints of fatigue, etc., etc. Not very memorable. And so what I did is I tried to find a celebrity who has had this disease. Selena Gomez, she has lupus. She has had a kidney transplant. She was in the movie Another Cinderella Story.
Hmm.
And so what I did is I created a fictional sequel to that, Shattered Slippers, Another Cinderella Story, starring Selena Gomez, where the plot of the movie actually has her experiencing symptoms of lupus. She has to go to the doctor. She gets diagnosed with lupus. This eventually turns into kidney failure. The students have to diagnose that throughout the movie, which then leads to a kidney transplant, which then requires her to be treated with our transplant drugs. So throughout this fictional movie, the students, they're able to walk through a clinical case in a fun format, in a more memorable format that they have since come to me months later and said, I remember this one aspect of the Selena Gomez case. Never once have I had a student come even at the next day and go, oh yeah, I remember that 23-year-old female that we treated that had fatigue. Never once has that happened. Another cool thing about the Selena Gomez case is that it actually spans throughout the curriculum. And so we start the case at the very beginning of the course where we treat her with lupus. We continue the case at the end of the course where we treat her for a kidney transplant. And then Selena Gomez has actually been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which she's very open about.
Hmm.
And we treat her for bipolar disorder. So we continue that same line of reasoning, that same clinical case, months and months later when they get into their mind, brain, and behavior block. And that's one of the reasons that students enjoy it is that they come back to me and they go, when are we going to finish the Selena Gomez case? When are we going to finish Shattered Slippers?
We have to know how it ends.
Exactly. And not once has somebody been like, oh, I have to know what happened to that 43-year-old male that came in with dyspnea.
How many of these prequels and sequels to our favorite movies have you put together for your students?
I've put together, let's see, probably on the order of 50 or 60 of these fictional movies. Most of these, though, are text, audio, and have images to them.
Mhm.
And so, how it works is that when we get in the lecture where we get to these cases, what I do is I put together a fictional movie poster to kind of get students in the mood. And then the following slide has text that is describing what the case is, what is happening. But then I use AI to narrate that case. And then I use AI to create an image of a fictional scene that might happen in that case. One of the reasons for this is that it's not very fun when you get to one of these cases and then you go, okay, who wants to read? Who wants to volunteer to read the case? Typically, what you get is you get crickets.
I could see that happening
There's
easily.
an awkward silence for 5 to 10 seconds, and then somebody finally gets sick of the silence and starts reading. What this allows is once the slide pops up, it automatically narrates it, typically narrates it in a better voice than mine because I get to pick which AI voice I want to use. And so it allows for easier flow, it allows for more immersion into these cases. Now, with that said, we have upped our game recently in that we have made a full on short film of one of these cases.
That's incredible. So what's this one on?
This one is on malaria. And so, for the malaria drugs, first students learn about malaria, how the malaria parasite can get into an individual through mosquitoes. It can then either hide out in the liver or it can get and grow inside of that person's red blood cells, which can then lyse the blood cells, explode them, get out, get picked up by another mosquito, and then the cycle continues. When I saw this, I saw a parasite getting into a red blood cell and then exploding this. Of course, the first thing that popped into my head was the Alien movie franchise.
If anyone has seen it, everyone knows exactly what scene you're talking about.
Exactly. Face hugger gets on you, grows inside, you get the chest burster, and then the cycle continues. So I thought, what if I made a fictional movie representing this as an alien movie? But I have red blood cells. How am I going to represent that? Sometimes they can hide out in the liver. How can I represent that? Why don't I tie all of my projects together and I can incorporate the Medimon into it? And so we have the red blood cell Medimon, which kind of looks like a little sea urchin. He explodes in the movie because he has a malaria parasite in him. We have the liver Medimon in it, which kind of looks like Groot a little bit. So
Okay.
kind of a tree creature where, as I mentioned, malaria can hide out inside of the liver. We have some of the malaria parasites hiding out with the liver in the movie. And then we also have it starring George Clooney and Rebel Wilson, at least AI versions of them, because both of them have been very open that they have suffered from malaria sometime in their past.
So was that all on you? Did you learn all of this or did you get some help for that?
No, we definitely got help for it. And so this was from a generous support from IIDS here on campus.
And IIDS, by the way, is the Institute for Interdisciplinary Data Sciences, which is a crew on campus that helps provide data and computing support for U of I researchers.
Yes, thank you. But anyway, so they gave us support both in kind of the processing power, which allows us to utilize some of these heavy AI imaging models in order to create images, as well as just the overall support to help us figure out how to put these together. And so, mentioning on the AI side is that I had this idea in order to make a fictional movie, in order to make these characters, in order to animate them, put them together, create an actual movie. I do not have those skills. Like I can't draw worth beans. For all of the Medimon, if you look at them, I did not draw them. I do not take credit for that. I had the idea of kind of the general idea of what they should look like, the mnemonics that should go into them. But we hired students. They've since graduated, but they are the ones who put the artwork together. So I'm not an artist. I cannot compose music. I can come up with a rough idea for a script, but in general, not a full-on fleshed one. And so I used AI to give me superpowers. Is I used it to help write the script. I use it to generate character sheets, to make animations, to convert my voice into Clooney and Rebel Wilson's voices. Not their actual clone voices, but in Australian voice, in American male voice. And then I use all of these different AI platforms in order to put the different pieces together and then composite it together into a fully functional movie. And so I felt like I had an entire movie production team behind me, even though it was just me.
Well, okay, so we're getting a little towards the end here. I think the biggest question out of all this is, are the students learning better?
Great question, and we've looked at this. And so one aspect of my research here on campus is actually medical educational research. And so not only do I produce these short films, do I produce these Medimon, but then I also study them with the students. Does it help? One, do they learn better? And then two, do they prefer it? Because again, going way back to the beginning, our two big problems are our students are learning more and more information. They're tasked with so much that they need to find new, better, easier ways to retain it. And then two, do they enjoy it either being in class or do they enjoy it elsewhere? And the results coming in for the achievement side, do they learn better? Sometimes they learn better. Sometimes it's not that they don't learn better, they just learn as well
Okay.
as the other material, except for the alien case. So when we've upped our game all the way to a short film, we found out that students that watch the short film in advance of taking their exam, not only their weekly exam, but also their cumulative final, which occurred weeks later,
So do they retain it?
do they retain it? Our students, which watched the video, actually scored 100% on those questions. It not only helped them lock it in best, but it helped them retain it best. But because of that, what we hope to do in the future is convert the rest of these 50 to 60 cases that I have that are audio and text into actual short films to hopefully promote that learning, that retention across the board for our pharmacology curriculum. On the preferences side, it's usually pretty straightforward. Almost all of the students prefer this material over the traditional 35-year-old male comes in, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's wonderful. Well, any last thoughts you want to leave with the audience?
Going back to our original problems on students not showing up at class, I think this not only happens necessarily in medical education, but across the board. And so for all of you professors out there, for students that aren't showing up at class, what I would recommend is see what they are doing, like where are they learning, and how can you incorporate not necessarily just that, but how can you incorporate whatever that other thing has into your curriculum, into your classroom. And it might seem like a big lift. It might seem extremely difficult. Take a look at AI. Like, see how AI can give you superpowers in order to do this. And so don't see this as a roadblock on, I can't make movies. I can't make games. I can't make creatures. You can. Actually, now you can.
All right. Well, thank you, Tyler, for coming in today.
Glad to be here.
All right, Danae. So, what'd you think?
Okay, I think this is so ingenious, and I love that Tyler's doing this. I love this idea of gamifying things to make them more engaging, because obviously we all have short attention spans. I just think his strategy here is really smart, and I hope it goes exactly how he wants it to.
I was just so impressed with his creativity, and obviously this is a labor of love for him, and it's just wonderful that he's taking the time to really help his students, not just giving them the information they need to learn, but helping them actually learn it. And I really hope that this kind of thing takes off across not just the medical fields, but for undergrads. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening to the Vandal Theory. You can visit our website, uidaho.edu/Vandal Theory, to learn all about our research. Email us at vandaltheory@uidaho.edu with any questions. Please visit your favorite podcasting platform out there to rate, review, and subscribe. My name is Lee Cooper.
And I'm Danae Lund.
Thanks for listening.